The Israeli military announced launching a new wave of strikes in Tehran, saying they were targeting military infrastructure belonging to the Iranian regime. Now, the military said in a statement that it has begun an additional wave of strikes targeting military infrastructure belonging to the IRGC targets across Tehran. A video released by the U.S. Central Command showed missiles striking Iranian military vehicles and equipments as part of Operation Epic Fury. The satellite images released by Planet Labs showed the damage caused by airstrikes across Iran since the US and Israel launched attacks on the country. The areas included Bandar Abbas military hub, missile base northwest of Isfahan missile base at north of Kermanshah, police command of Islamic Republic of Iran, and damaged streets of Imam Khamenei Square in Tehran. In the meantime, Israeli Prime Minister's office has claimed that Israel and US have made historic gains to protect our citizens and the civilized world in their war against Iran. Well, a spokesperson for Netanyahu said that the attack was needed as Iran was rebuilding its atomic base program in new underground bunkers, and because there were indications of Iranian plans to attack Israel and American forces in West Asia. In a press conference, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said that Iran is being absolutely crushed in the US-Israeli war under the leadership of Donald Trump. Listen to this.
Under the leadership of President Donald J. Trump, the rogue Iranian terrorist regime is being absolutely crushed. 47 years of tolerating and enabling the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism are over. Iran's murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America, and they are paying in blood.
Now, according to the Israeli military and Tehran's state media, Iran launched a fresh round of missiles at Israel early Thursday, triggering alerts in several areas in Tel Aviv. Explosions were also heard in Jerusalem, but there were no immediate reports of casualties. Israel's emergency service said it had received no reports of casualties following Thursday's early rocket fire, and the military cleared people to leave their shelters. On the other hand, the Iranian military command warned in a statement that the deceit by Americans could lead to the collapse of their entire military and economic infrastructure on the region. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards on Wednesday said that they would exert a heavy price, and this is for the attacks and fired missiles across the region. The IRGC claimed that they have closed the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point into the Gulf through which a fifth of the world's crude oil flows. Simultaneously, the Islamic regime has warned that it could target Israel's Dimona nuclear site if Israel and US attempted to topple the Iranian leadership. The statement was reported by Iran's semi-official news agency, citing an Iranian military official. On the other hand, Iran said on Wednesday that 1,045 people have been killed in the country since Saturday as a result of US-Israeli strikes. The toll follows joint US-Israeli attacks on Tehran and several other Iranian cities starting Saturday morning. The United Nations has released a report suggesting that an estimated 100,000 people have fled Tehran in the first 2 days of the US and Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th and March 1st. UNHCR, the UN refugee agency, added that there was no increase in cross-border movements linked to recent events, while the border crossing with Afghanistan remains stable with no significant changes. And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Lester Munson. He's a senior fellow, National Security Institute, and co-head of the international practice at BGR Group, which is a leading government relations firm in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Mr. Munson, for joining us on the broadcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Munson, the Trump administration has been facing scrutiny over, its rationale behind the attacks on Iran. And now the Senate has backed President Trump's military campaign in a 47-53 vote. And while we know historically that prolonged conflicts, under unclear endgames tend to erode the domestic support as well. How do you think President Trump is going to handle this?
Well, that is a great question. And the end game, of course, in a way, is the most important thing. President Trump has indicated this is not going to be a long campaign. This is very different than what the U.S. and its allies did in Iraq and Afghanistan 25 years ago. President Trump's approach does appear to be very different. He's looking for quick action and a quick result. We're not talking about the U.S. occupation of Iran or the U.S. spending trillions of dollars to refashion Iranian society. So right there, it's probably a vast improvement on previous efforts. I think it's war, and we should be very humble about predicting any kind of outcome here. It's a mistake to try to predict the next thing that will happen, because the enemy gets a vote. Iran is fighting back here, but it does look like the U.S. side, with Israel and now others joining it, is going to prevail here. The question is, who will be running Iran when the dust settles? That is the big question, and I think President Trump has some flexibility in who that is. What he's looking for is specific behavior from that leader, someone who's going to bring an Iranian government that it can do deals with the West and be a better citizen, and be a place where we don't have to worry about support for terrorism and nuclear weapons and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And Mr. Munson, you mentioned that, of course, the bigger thing to look out for would be who is going to run Iran when the dust settles. But having said that, can the use of this overwhelming force that we're seeing on Iran, it is going to weaken the Iranian regime, but what is going to come next? And there is, of course, the possibility of it unleashing more instability in the region. And while regime change is one thing, what happens after this instability has been injected in the region is going to be completely another. And given the size of Iran, given the multi-layered ethnic setup and the ideological roots which run deep, how do you think, what is the risk of the war being prolonged? Even though Trump has said that it's not going to be a long one, and you've yourself mentioned Iraq and Afghanistan previously, but how is it going to be contained going forward?
Well, we don't know, of course. And again, we need to be humble about predicting too much here. But I don't think President Trump at all intends to follow the model previously, which means it's highly unlikely we're going to see a prolonged campaign here. The question of who runs Iraq, of course, or Iran, of course, is a little bit of a Freudian slip there, is, of course, hugely important. But already we have seen the decapitation of the regime. The Ayatollah is dead. He ran one of the worst, probably the worst government in the world for decades. It killed thousands of Americans and numerous other people unnecessarily. It fomented rebellions in its neighbors. It supported the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, which are rebel forces that undermine governments across the region. They have been a huge problem for not just the United States and Israel, but also Sunni Arab countries and European countries. Iran has even been a menace in Latin America. So the removal of the Ayatollah alone is a significant achievement. And now, as the U.S. and Israel degrade Iran's weapons, particularly its ability to launch missiles, and eventually, again, we will see strikes, I assume, on what remains of the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Those strikes alone are going to cause Iran to take a very significantly different approach in the region. It can only be better than what was before. So I already feel that the President Trump has made some significant accomplishments with what he has done with Iran so far.
Absolutely, and we understand that given the objectives and regime change, featuring quite prominently and with assassinating the supreme leader, of course, that is settled there. And the US has said that it does not want a prolonged war. But when it comes to Iran, we know that Iran has been retaliating. And according to the US Defense Assessment standpoint, how do you think Iran can, realistically sustain this counterattack? Because we know that what they have been leveraging are these, cheaper, high-volume drone attacks to exhaust the opposition's defense, and the economics of it is, of course, there is a disbalance there as well. Now, how long can Iran sustainably go along with this this level of conflict?
Well, the U.S. stockpiles are classified information, of course, so I can't give you any kind of specific answer, but I will say that the more the U.S. and Israel can destroy these weapons on the ground, particularly the launchers and other facilities that produce these missiles, the less able Iran is going to be to fight back. Now, there is potentially, it's possible that Iran gets a little bit of an advantage because its attack drones and that kind of thing are relatively cheap, and it can be very expensive to shoot them down. So there is potential there, and again, it is war, and we don't know exactly what will happen. We need to remain grounded in that uncertainty. But I would say in the grand scheme of things, the U.S. has a ton of resources. Israel has significant resources as well. Iran is utterly unable to defend itself. All of its air defenses have been eliminated, to my understanding. So their ability to fight back is highly limited. Yes, they can shoot off a few missiles, but the anti-missile capabilities on the other side, on the U.S. side and the Israeli side, and the Sunni Arab side are very significant. So it's going to be a rare occurrence for any of those to get through defenses and do any kind of damage.
Of course, Mr. Munson, and as you've mentioned, it's still too soon to reach, any conjecture at this point. This is still an evolving situation, and the variables are yet to fall in place. And, while killing of the Ayatollah has definitely, delivered a strong hammer to the Iranian regime, but we do understand that the regime is more entrenched, and it is prepared perhaps for a situation like which has developed recently. And, what are the odds of it instead consolidating, the hardline forces and trigger a survival response perhaps from the Iranian side?
Well, Iran is, they're not a bunch of wimps. They've endured significant hardship in the past. They've suffered under a lot of economic sanctions, and there has been conflict. That is all true. You cannot underestimate their abilities here, and that's not to talk about their merits as humans, because I think their government has been atrocious, but they can be very tough. There's no doubt about that. And we should prepare for the worst, and that is what military planning is about. The U.S. is the best in the world at that. Israel itself has amazing advantages in this area. I feel very comfortable in assuming that the U.S. side has accounted for this possibility and is prepared to hit Iran where it hurts the most and force a change in aspect here from the Iranian government in the relatively short term. There are actions happening not just in the air, but there are certain things happening on the ground that aren't going to be disclosed, I think, until later. There are other forces in the region that seem to be getting activated. So I think Iran is very much in a corner. It has zero allies in this effort. Even Russia has abandoned them. China has urged them to put down their weapons and allow for the free passage of energy shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. So Iran really does not have a lot of places to turn here, and as each day goes by, I think is going to have less and less ability to determine its own fate.
We hear you, Mr. Munson. Now, would you agree that wars also have a way of, having a domestic political dimension as well? And we understand that, like Trump, Netanyahu too faces, elections very soon, and is also facing a lot of scrutiny internally from Israel. The citizens have been accusing him of giving Hamas an opportunity for the October 7 attack, which inadvertently played out. Now, how much of that political calculus do you think is influencing the war here with Iran?
Well, look, I'm not expert enough on Israeli politics to tell you how much that might be affecting Prime Minister Netanyahu's decisions. What I know is he has led a very effective campaign for the last 2.5 years since the October 7th attacks of 2023 against Iranian proxy forces, against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and even against the Houthis in Yemen. The Israelis have targeted individuals, terrorists in Tehran before this attack happened, and assassinated them from afar. They have been extraordinarily effective. So yes, Prime Minister Netanyahu may be facing electoral pressures at home. That's perfectly acceptable. That is how democracy works. He's also really demonstrated that when Israel needs to win the fight, he has been able to deliver that. So the Israeli people will make their own judgment. That is their decision. The United States, will embrace whoever the leader of Israel is, I am certain, because of the commonality of values and interests.
Of course, and when conflicts move faster than diplomacy, miscalculation becomes, an even bigger threat, Mr. Munson. And here now, if the conflict does drag on, there would be a spike in, the oil prices. Security risks are going to increase, and there is no quick resolution in sight yet. Now, having said that, the political blowback in the United States could be significant if, we remain on the same track. So how does President Trump sell this to an American base, which is already pretty skeptical of, open-ended wars?
Yeah, well, you highlighted earlier that the Senate today effectively approved of President Trump's actions in Iran. I think the House of Representatives in Washington is going to follow with a similar vote tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. And yes, President Trump himself has campaigned against forever wars. He needs to demonstrate that this war can be short and effective. If he can do that, I think he will gain great political support from the American people. If he's not able to do that, then he probably will suffer politically, and there could be very bad news for Republicans in the election in the United States this November. So that's fair. That's how democracy works, and so I think that I'm sure that's helping motivate him to do this as well as possible. To the extent he wasn't motivated well enough for the good of the country to do that anyway. So all of that is of a piece. I think the president is looking to resolve this thing relatively quickly, and in a manner that won't require the U.S. to occupy Iran, that won't require us to spend a lot of money refashioning their society, and instead will result in Iran that is a responsible member of the international community.
Right, Mr. Munson, this is, of course, a developing and a very delicate situation, and we are watching all the developments closely. The world is very closely watching all the developments. And, of course, we'll have to wait and see what comes next. But for now, thank you so much for joining us in the broadcast and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks for having me.